I've been going through some of my paperwork, and I thought I would share a letter with you folks that I had written, um, because I have some concerns about HIPAA laws, and I didn't realize that it would be an obstruction to getting what I needed to be able to pay for my son's death benefits. And I went through a lot, probably 4 months worth of um, fighting to get the doctor's office to fill out this information for me so I could get reimbursed my son's death benefits. So I had a lot of problems when I went. My son had seen these doctors up in Augusta area. So I had found the name of the CEO. I talked to him on the phone, and he was supposed to help straighten it out. At least he thought he straightened it out, and it didn't. It didn't happen. Like I said, it took me 4 months to get this resolved. And meanwhile, I put my son's um, funeral services on a credit card because we didn't have the money up front to pay for all that. I'm going to leave out the names. I'm going to read the facts too, because I wrote a letter with not a lot of emotion, mostly facts. I wrote this in May 25th, 2017. This was 5 months after my son passed. Dear so-and-so, I am writing at this time to express my concerns following the communications I had with the office in this particular town, following the suicide of my son, John Norton, on December 15th, 2016. He was a patient of many physicians at that location, including, and I mentioned the different doctors' names, there were 3 of them. It took 2.5 months before I was able to get what I needed to be able to pursue his death benefit to pay for his funeral and burial expenses. It began when I faxed a form on February 3rd to the doctor, his most recent doctor, which required a signature stating my son's mental health issues prior to the age of 19, which I clearly stated to look for the note that a previous doctor had put in his file, because she referenced just that. And I know this because the doctor had talked to me, and she had my son fill out some paperwork at the time regarding this, and I knew that. A signature was all that was required, yet I called to the office numerous times, including my home phone records, 27 phone calls to that office, trying to get that form signed. At first, I was told it was highly sensitive to release medical records, which I did not need personally, but they said they would never release to anyone else because of HIPAA laws. They said I needed authority. My son had no will, and I believe the law states that if no will is left, a spouse could get the information first, and if no spouse, then the parents. I had been in touch with probate court, and my son had basically very little assets, so I was able to get an affidavit of small estate. For anybody that might need something like that in the future, it was a form that I paid $5 to the probate court for. I could make as many copies of it as I wanted, and I used it to close out accounts and all of that stuff. I sent that to the office after I was told they couldn't help me. They said this form may be enough. Then it was as if they really hoped I would just go away. At this point, I believed I was not going to get the form signed. This is exactly how I felt. I was not going away because we needed my son's death benefit to pay for his funeral expenses. The trauma of my son's death was so painful, I just can't believe what I went through with, and then I named the office. It was extremely upsetting to me how much I had to endure to get information from the doctor. At one point, I contacted SAMHSA, which is the Substance Abuse Mental Health Services Association, and called someone who put me in contact with you. We spoke, and I felt it was really going to get resolved. And then I mentioned one of the people that works there who was supposedly going to help me. So this woman called me back and told me basically that the doctor was reluctant to sign anything about my son's illness prior to age 19 because they were worried MetLife, which was the name of the insurance company that we had benefits with, may come back on them for more information. I told her that the only reference in my son's file should have been from the previous doctor's notes, as well as something my son also attested to and also filled out paperwork for the doctor. I had written this exact information in my original fax to the doctor. I told this, I think she was an assistant, that I would be happy if the doctor just attached the previous doctor's note to the letter. Excuse me. Unfortunately, after being more than patient, I left a message one morning that if I did not hear from the assistant within an hour, then I would be making the 1-hour drive to that office from my town of Standish. I ended up driving there and spoke with, and I gave a person's name, whom I had spoke with several times, informed me that this assistant did not work there, but she reached her, who said she would meet me at that office within a half an hour. So the assistant shows up with an envelope, and she wanted to go over everything with me, and she put the fax into MetLife while I was there. She was very cordial, but I was at that office for 3 hours, going over information which included copies of 5 clinical notes and a signed form of the affidavit of small estate and the previous doctor's note. She blackened out substance abuse information on his notes, and I told her, I said, it really doesn't matter because I know what my son had done in the past. We finally received his death benefit. I am writing this letter, and I apologize for the length, but I told by SAMHSA that if I wanted to file a grievance or complaint that I need to write a letter to you first. I never want another parent who lost a child or an adult to suicide to experience what I experienced at that office. Thank you for returning my call that day when I was trying to get this resolved, and thank you for your time. Respectfully, Susan Norton, and I wrote in parentheses, John Norton's mom. I also included one of my son's memorial cards because I wanted this person, the CEO of this place, to know that my son was a human being. He wasn't just a name in a medical record. Anyways, I did that because I just felt that put a human touch on it. I tried to basically just speak about the facts. And I did write, our son lived with us shortly following his diagnosis and several hospitalizations. I had a great deal of respect for him as he tried to manage his illness with yoga, medication, and Tai Chi, and he spent a lot of time in nature where he felt at peace. He accepted his illness and he functioned as well as he could for almost 5 years. He was on clozapine and that worked okay for him, but it did not come without side effects and required vigilance with lab work. Unfortunately, he felt it had not been working well since in August of 2016 when we were camping and had to go to the ER twice, causing our vacation to be cut short for him. For my husband brought him home and stayed with him so he was not alone. This is life caring for someone with an SMI, which is serious mental illness. He died from a gunshot wound from a gun he got from a friend, unbeknownst to us. I found his lifeless body in his room, devastating on every level, because I know had it not been for bad judgment and his stopping taking the medication the last week, I know he would have chosen life. So, I had to write this letter because, like I said, I was going to file a complaint with SAMHSA, just because I didn't want anybody else to go through what I had gone through. It was horrific. Anyhow, I waited about almost 2 months, and I was ready to call SAMHSA because I hadn't heard from him. And the day that I was going to call them, I got a letter from him in the mail, so that was kind of serendipitous. And he actually outlined several changes in their protocol about how they would deal with this type of situation should it arise again. They put it all in writing for me, like all in bullet form, to show exactly what they were planning to, what kind of changes were going to be implemented. So I was very satisfied with that. And I wrote a letter back and I said, thank you very much for taking the time to implement some changes. I know it will mean a lot to people who come after me. and I'm not going to file a complaint. I'm very satisfied with your response. Thank you. So that's kind of how I handle that. And instead of getting so emotional in my letter, I try to just stick to the facts about kind of what happened. So I just thought I'd share that with you. I might be reading some things to share a little bit later down the road because I kept journals the whole time. Just some things that might help other people and some tools that people might be able to use. Ideas. I mean, it's always good to brainstorm and share information. So I guess that's all I wanted to share with you tonight. Thanks. Bye now.